got to listen to the kid who murders teddy bears.
We're going to talk about Percy now because we need to talk about something slightly happier. I say only slightly because we're still in Percy has no memories land. So to catch everybody up, we just started. We're on chapter 4 for our discussion for today. But Percy woke up with no memories, went through the wolf house, went through some sort of trial and training with Lupa, and then found his way to the entrance of Camp Jupiter, was met with Hera/Juno in the disguise of an old lady, and then was kind of just like dumped into camp. And so where we left off, he met Marina, who is one of the current fighters, and then he also was on his way to the augur, Octavian. And so Frank has been sent away to go polish weapons, if I remember correctly. And we have Hazel walking him now to go talk to Octavian in the chapters we start with. So we start in Percy's head. And he starts to notice the difference between the troops, like all of the different legions that are in camp. So as they're getting closer to the front gate, the barracks got bigger and nicer, even the ghosts looked better, with fancier armor and shinier auras. Percy tried to decipher the banners and symbols hanging from the front of the buildings. And so he asks her, are you guys divided into cabins? And he asked her all the questions that, like, you as the audience, knowing what Camp Half-Blood would work like, would think of, even though he doesn't remember it. So, she says, sort of. We have 5 cohorts, about 40 kids each. Each cohort is divided into barracks of 10, like roommates, kind of. And so he's like, you're telling me there's 200 kids here? And she says yes, about roughly. And he says, and all of them are children of the gods? The gods have been busy. And we find out this one, it's not all major gods. A lot of the minor Roman gods also have kids there. But it's not just the direct demigods. It's their descendants, too. So there's legacy demigod. I don't even know what to call them. But, like, legacy kids who are children of demigods or sometimes even grandchildren.
Like, they don't necessarily have a direct connection. Like, it's not their direct parent. But they're able to still go. That just... I never know what I want when I think about Percy and Annabeth. Like, one day having kids, I don't know that I necessarily want them to because of how much that would be for them and their kids. But also, if they ever do, it's nice to know that no matter what, they can go to a place like that and their kids, and all the way down can keep going to Camp Jupiter. And if they need, like, a place to go like that one day.
Yeah, so it's a sanctuary, and they would also potentially be able to train and go into the legions themselves. So he asks if the legacies then have demigod powers, and it's a toss-up. They sometimes do, they sometimes don't. But what Hazel says is they all can be trained. All the best Roman generals and emperors, they all claim to be descended from the gods. That's true. Julius claimed descendant from Aeneas, who was a son of Venus, which, like, that goes back generations at that point. There's also Romulus and Remus, the mythological... with mythology stuff in Rome, I always think of it as, like, mytho-history, because I don't know, like, what could potentially be real and not real. They're supposedly sons of Mars. And so... It is a thing. It is a thing that Roman emperors eventually tried to do. I mean, the Egyptians were doing it. They borrowed it from them, most likely, but... Let's see. So, the camp augur, we're going to meet Octavian. He's a legacy, descendant of Apollo. He's got the gift of prophecy, supposedly. And Percy catches on to that. He's like, supposedly? Yeah. And she says, you'll see. And so then Percy asks, like, okay, so everybody's divided. Are they divided by who their godly parent is? And she's like, hell no, everything would be so uneven. I would literally be the only person in my cohort. And he asks the next obvious question, which is, who's your parent? But he doesn't get the answer, like, in any of the chapters we read. Or no, wait, he kind of gets the answer, but he doesn't know he got the answer.
Yeah, he has no idea still.
Yes. Let's see. So they run into a ghost at this point, a Lar. I can't remember if the singular has the E, but one of the Lares named Vitellius, and Vitellius was very concerned with all of the new recruits that come in. So he asks some questions about Percy. I just thought this little part of it was funny. We need only the best for the cohort. Does he have all of his teeth? Can he fight? Does he clean stables? Percy says yes, yes, and no. And clean stables, like, of course, I'm sure Rick was trying to reference back to Battle of the Labyrinth when he has to clean the, like, man-eating horses stables. Let's see. So, what we find out is, he called the Legion the Fulminata. And Hazel translates that for him. Armed with lightning, that's our motto. The 12th Legion was around for the entire Roman Empire. When Rome fell, a lot of legions just disappeared. We went underground, acting on secret orders from Jupiter himself. Stay alive, recruit demigods and their children, and keep Rome going. We've been doing that ever since, moving around to wherever Roman influence was strongest. The last few centuries, we've been in America. And Percy, like, he thinks to himself, oh yeah, this sounds familiar somehow, so I believe it. So yeah, we find out Hazel's in the 5th cohort. She just joined up last September. And so, to give everybody the reminder, we found out in last week's chapters that Jason disappeared in October. And so, she would have came literally just a few weeks right before that.
Mm-hmm.
And Percy notices that as well. He points that out. And Hazel seems to not really be comfortable when he talks about that, so he just drops it for now.
Mm-hmm.
And, let's see. From there, she shows him, like, this outlook where they get to see the entire valley, and this is where we kind of get the picture that leads into even the most recent books, which is that Camp Jupiter is more of a sanctuary than Camp Half-Blood. Whereas Camp Half-Blood only has the demigods, let's say ages, 7 to 20-something. This one has full-grown families. It has children. It has old people. It has the Lares. Why do I always want to say the E-Rock? Lares. And so they, like, he's kind of baffled, even though he shouldn't know he should be. Because he never expected any of this. And he's like, I've been just trying to survive Gorgons the past few days. People are old here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like there's like a college.
Yeah.
And a entire system. Like there's like healthcare and just like places for people to live and like businesses. He finally gets food. Hazel gives him like breakfast and tells him that after they're done, he can go to like the Roman baths and actually be clean again. And because he probably hasn't been like that in a while at this point. And but it's just that's kind of the thing with Camp Jupiter in these books particularly is it's very interesting when Percy runs into the Greek people again, because this very obviously you can see how something like this would be like his ultimate like hope for the future, like a dream that he could like live in a place with Annabeth and Grover, and his mom could come and like see him here all the time and he would be safe. Yeah. And they would have everything that they would need. They're not like struggling to get the things that they need like Camp Half-Blood is. And so that gives him a lot to go on. During the rest of the books when he has almost nothing else to go on, It's just like the hope that he can go back to this place one day and like actually have a chance to like live a normal life. Normal, live like an okay life where he is able to be himself. It would, and the people that he cares about have a place to stay all the time where they're actually safe.
Yeah, it's such a big hope. And like even for us as the readers, knowing that this exists when the life expectancy of demigods is not great in the first 5 books at all. So that's really what it is. But yeah, so this conversation, Hazel starts hinting at who she is. And she references a brother. And we also get a little line in here. I had clocked earlier that I'm pretty sure it was the Gorgons who mentioned that something about death, and death was capitalized. I'm like, Rick did that on purpose. He's not talking about Thanatos. And so, yeah, Hazel drops drops it, but like halfway through the sentence stops. My brother says death isn't blank. Like, does not finish that sentence. They're interrupted by an elephant for their war games coming behind them.
Hannibal.
Yes. So, in Kevlar, by the way. Okay. So Hazel, takes this as their cue, like, let's move on to Octavian. So, another thing that happens on their way there, they run into a fawn, which is their version of satyrs, to remind everybody, who basically like begging for change. And at some point during this whole exchange where he's asking them for help, something drops from Hazel, and Percy notices, but Hazel like very quickly picks it up, and he's like, "Is that a diamond? Like, what is going on?" And we don't find out until we're in Hazel's head what's happening there. She has to do a like, "I'll tell you later" kind of thing to Percy, but it was kind of one of the first hints. And again, we're figuring out who Hazel is right now. Let's see. And the fawn actually does like Hazel, which is funny. So this particular fawn named Dawn, which of course Percy's like, Dawn the fawn, like, yeah, it's Dawn the fawn. He actually likes Hazel because she's one of the people who at least says please when she's like, go away, dude. Everybody else just treats him like he's annoying. I have to wonder if he's going to be our satyr helper, just because I feel like we always end up getting one, with Gleason being the one for the other kids, but...
It's, what's his name? Hedge.
Oh, it is, yeah. Oh, wait, no. Who's Gleason again?
That's Gleason. Gleason's his first name. Gleason Hedge.
Okay, yeah, so... See, they pass a temple that looks pretty intense. We find out that is the temple of Bellona, which is a goddess of war from the Roman side. Reina's mom. And then they pass a temple for Mars Ultor. And he's like, Mars? Ares, the war god? And Hazel says that's his Greek name, but yeah, same guy. Ultor means the Avenger. He's the second most important god of Rome. Percy wasn't thrilled to hear that. For some reason, just looking at the ugly red building made him feel angry.
Yeah.
Let's see. They finally get to the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, and they can tell Octavian's already reading the signs, and so Percy's catching on to the Latin at this point. He's like, "Jupiter, the best and the greatest, right? What's Neptune's title? The coolest and most awesome? Not quite." And so we end up finding from Hazel. I actually should have looked this up myself if he has an epithet like that. But she basically has to tell him Neptune's kind of like bad news around here. I'm sorry. The Romans didn't exactly like him that much. And Percy's like, great. So now I'm the scary Neptune kid. Cool.
Yeah, he can never show up at a camp and have people like excited to see him.
Yeah. We find out the last time these people have heard of a child of Neptune was 1906 earthquake in San Francisco. So, yeah. Kind of very similar to what happened to Leo last book. Let's see. Even if he joined the camp, he would never be loved. His best hope was to be scary to his new campmates. Maybe if he did really well, they'd give him some moldy apples. And so I point that out because we are anti-Dark Percy on this channel. And so to point out the fact that he had to lean into that to gain respect of these Roman cohorts. Just saying, it's. I feel like this is the start of it, is him figuring out, like, they're not going to like me just because of who my dad is.
Yeah, it's the same thing, like, all over again in a way. It's a little different, obviously, than how things were on the Greek side, but still, he is aware of, like, oh, everyone's going to be afraid of me. I don't like the idea of everyone being afraid of me because I just exist. I didn't mean to. I just am here. And so he's like, okay, so I'm not going to try to, he's like going into it this time as like older Percy, being aware of like, okay, people probably are going to be afraid of me. They're probably not going to like me very much. So I'm not going to go into this like expecting them to.
Yeah.
And so instead I'm going to go into this trying to make them feel as comfortable as I can while I remind them of their own like fate on accident. And so he's just more aware and not expecting everybody to like give him a warm welcome or anything like that.
Yeah, and to kind of further illustrate this, the Neptune temple in Camp Jupiter is a tiny little, like, he says it's the size of a tool shed. And so he doesn't feel it in any respect, not even visually.
Yeah.
Poor kid. And so he does still feel his dad's presence, even if we know that, you know, that's the Roman aspect of his dad. So he leaves the last piece of food he had in his backpack, which was an old stale bagel, and he says, "Hey Dad, if you can hear me, help me out, okay? Give me my memory back, tell me what to do." And this is where they then move on to Octavian for real. So what it says is, compared to Neptune's tool shed, Jupiter's temple was definitely Optimus and Maximus. The marble floor was etched with fancy mosaics and Latin inscriptions. 60 feet above, the domed ceiling sparkled gold. The whole temple was open to the wind. So there's also a statue of Jupiter in here, dressed in a silk XXX large purple toga, holding a lightning bolt. And Percy, when he sees this, he says, "It doesn't look like that." And he's like,
and he's like, "What?" It's like, never mind.
Yeah, he's like, "The Master Bolt. What are you talking about?"
Never mind.
Yeah,
he's just trying.
The kid had it in a backpack accidentally for a while.
Well, there's something else that happens in this part that I can't remember right now, but you'll say it in a second, but I just want to mention it now, that a general like kind of thing that happens in this book is that Percy can like tell, like, it's similar to how Jason like just knew things, but Jason would just be like, I don't know why I am a Roman version of Wikipedia. And he would just like, other people were the one questioning him, but for Percy, there's moments where he can like know things, but he gets so frustrated by the fact that he can't actually remember why he knows these things. And so it's just like they're different personality types. Like Jason was one that wasn't thinking about it all too much because he was just trying to like be a strong soldier and like, you know, keep going and that kind of thing. He's just not one, he's not like super connected to like emotions a lot of the time in general. And so he wasn't really thinking about it, but Percy is. And so he gets really frustrated during many times in this book where he can't remember something and he wants to know so bad. And it's just, he gets so, that's some of my favorite stuff with him and Frank and Hazel when they're on the quest and stuff, because they help him deal with that kind of stuff without making it like a big thing, but they do help him in those sort of moments so he doesn't just get, because that is really frustrating to just be like, I just want to remember this thing. Why can't I remember this freaking thing? Why can't my brain just tell me?
Yeah. And so we see him go through that, as you said, way more than Jason. Because his thoughts in that one are, for a second he thought he remembered something, now it was gone. So they get to Octavian, And Octavian immediately greets them, the Graikus, how interesting. And Percy...
Also, like, don't greet people with, like, borderline slurs.
It kind of is in this camp.
It honestly, like, in the context of this story, they're calling him a derogatory word for Greek people that's meant to be, like, a bad thing. And so it essentially is. And I'm like, don't do that. Don't be like Octavian.
They got a knife over what Percy perceives to be a dead animal. And we find out that the way these kids read the auguries now is by cutting up stuffed animals and looking at the fluff in the middle. I just love it.
Mm-hmm.
And there is something about Octavian too. I'm not sure. Like, I know there is the Augustan jokes in here, but I also want to believe there's something else to Percy telling him, you seem really familiar.
Luke.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm assuming, but Luke.
The messy blonde hair.
Yeah, skinny, blonde-haired person who everyone at camp keeps telling him he has to meet, who's in charge of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so this version of Percy, he's nervous when he meets him because he doesn't like Luke, as opposed to, 12-year-old him who had no idea, but it's definitely Luke. Mm-hmm. Luke in the books is blonde. And so that's definitely who he's being reminded of. Even if they don't look physically the same, even though they do. Just like the position they have in like the camp that everyone keeps telling him to go talk to him and stuff. Like when he was at Camp Half-Blood at first, that's how it was like with Luke. And so that's who Percy thinks of, which is honestly, that's pretty good. Like when it comes to Octavian, that's a pretty similar comparison to make because of the lack of anything good that this character manifests. Because the other part of this, it's it's so funny. We get to talk about Ovid for a little bit because this made me laugh out loud. Like I started laughing and just like took a picture of this and just started laughing because I just like couldn't. But like Rick is so funny because his audience are like kids, and so they don't realize that what he's like just very obviously telling you, except when you're adults and you like know things about Greek mythology or Roman mythology, if you want to be like, people are weird about it.
Yeah.
But he says, Percy, when he says, you remind me of someone, and he says, I can't remember who, when he's nervous, and he says, possibly my namesake Octavian, Augustus Caesar. Excuse, like people say that I have a remarkable resemblance.
Yeah, it was like, So yeah, Percy moves on from that one, and he says, why did you call me the Greek? Octavian says, I saw it in the auguries. The message said the Greek has arrived, or possibly the goose has cried. I'm thinking the first interpretation is correct. And this one, I don't know if it's supposed to be a joke on the prophecies or also just a joke on translating, because like translating stuff from ancient words, like sometimes I've made the joke on this podcast before. It's been a very long time, but I forget what the word is that's used for husband in the Odyssey, and it's a Calypso line too, where it's like she kept him as a husband or something like that. And the form of the word could also be drink. And I remember being like brand new mom, breastfeeding at like 2 a.m. translating that and being like, Odysseus can be her drink? What?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, I think it might be a joke on that, potentially. Anyways, Percy then has to go through the entire story again. Of, like, yeah, I don't know what happened. I don't have memories. I had to carry this old lady into the camp. No idea what's going on. Let's see. So, Juno, he mused. We call her Juno Minetta, Juno the Warner. She appears in times of crisis to counsel Rome about great threats. And Percy asks, I hear the Feast of Fortuna is next week. The Gorgons warned there'd be an invasion on that day. Did you see that in your stuffing? And Octavian says, sadly, no. The will of the gods is hard to discern, and these days my vision is even darker. And he brings up here the Sibylline books, which I've actually told this story somewhere on my page before, because there was a very particular tyrant king in early Roman days. The Sibyl, like, the lore of the Sibyl goes to Aeneas, even, because the Sibyl is this, like, oracle that guides him through the underworld. And she's a woman who, she made a trade with Apollo where she got, like, basically a monkey's paw wish, where she's like, I want to never die. And, or no, I want to live as many years as grains of sand are in my hand, which would have been countless. Mm-hmm. And Apollo's like, okay, but you're not going to stop aging. And so she just, like, gets older and older and more pruny and shriveled up and stuff. So, yeah, she's got that association with Apollo, with oracles, with this Roman history piece with Aeneas. And so there's this story of this tyrant king who an old lady comes to him and says, I have these 9 books, and you have to buy them from me. And she gives him this really extraordinary price. And he's like, go away, old lady. She burns 3 of the books, comes back the next day with 6. And she's like, so I have these books. I need you to buy them. Gives him a higher price than the 9. And he's like, you are insane. Go away, old lady. And then he, like, finally asks his augurs, what's going on with this old lady and these books? And they're like, you should have been buying the books, dude. And so he buys them up when there's only 3 left, for an even more extraordinary price. And so Octavian wanted to go on a quest to save these 3 that were then, you know, like this thing of Roman legend, these books that mysteriously lived somewhere in Rome that people would then consult in times of crises, that at some point were rumored to have burned. And that's, like, why we have no evidence of the exact thing. There's things that we think are fragments from the Sibylline books, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. And he does bring those up, and also Rick uses that to then shoehorn in the prophecy from the Roman side. Yes. Because we've had the prophecy of the 7 from the Greek side already a couple times. Mm-hmm. And now we find out that that was one of the few excerpts they seem to have from the Sibylline books. And it's written all over the floor. Octavian also has it memorized, and he's, like, reciting it as, you know, like Percy's reading it from the floor. So.
Oh, wait. Yes. This part I wanted to mention, because, you know, Percy doesn't, like, remember anything, obviously. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of have to, like, find these clues. But this part, when he, when Octavian is, like, reading the prophecy, mm-hmm. he starts shaking.
Yes.
Like, so badly, where he thinks that there's an earthquake, mm-hmm. and that the cabin that they're in is shaking. And then he realizes, no, I'm just shaking.
Yeah.
Because he's terrified. And he doesn't, like, remember anything, but stuff that happens in the next chapter kind of goes into, like, you can, like, pick apart, like, not pick apart, but, like, put together, like, when actual Percy is back, like, what he might be feeling about stuff.
Yeah.
That's happening right now, and it's not going to be the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah. So Percy recognizes the oracle, and he's like, I've heard this. I know it's important. And Octavian's like, of course it's important. We call it the prophecy of 7. It's several thousand years old. We don't know what it means. Yeah. Each time someone tries to interpret it, well, Hazel can tell you, bad things happen. This is also, once again, we are anti-Dark Percy, so I have to point out this next part, which made me so mad for Percy. Octavian is like, you know, like, finally let me read the auguries for you. And he's like, that's a great specimen you have. And Percy's like, what are you talking about? And he was looking at the pillow pet that Percy stole from Bargain Mart in Napa. Yeah. And so he just takes it, and then he cuts it. And Percy's like, hey, that was like his only friend.
And he's like, I went through so much with that stuffed animal, and it was the only comfort he had. I will say, just as, like, a small spoiler, because it's fun, that one of my favorite scenes from this book, because it's just Percy, is, I think, probably going to be one that we read next week when they're doing, like, their version of Capture the Flag. Mm-hmm. And him and Octavian interact in a way, and people are like, oh my god, like, why are you like, why do you hate him so much? He's like, he killed my pillow pet. Like, he has a grudge against Octavian from this moment on. And I'm like, yeah, child, like, be upset at him because you do deserve to have a freaking stuffed animal when you can't remember anything about your life.
So yeah, he slashes open the belly of the pillow pet, pours the stuffing on the table, tosses the carcass aside, and Percy is describing this to us, by the way. I'm saying it this way because Percy is describing it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Mutters a few words over the fluff, and then turned with a big smile on his face. Good news, Percy may join the Legion. We'll assign him a cohort at evening muster. Tell Reyna that I approve. Okay, then Octavian gets scummy. And here's where we start knowing as the audience he's scummy, if you didn't already get the hint from his name, which is he starts talking about the election for a new Praetor, which we know that they want to do because Jason was the other one along with Reyna, and there needs to be two. And that they can't do it until this Feast of Fortuna, when they would be able to hold the election. And Hazel says Jason isn't dead. Like when he's bringing up the election, you're the augur. You're supposed to be looking for him. And Octavian says, I am. I consult the gods every day. Alas, after 8 months, I found nothing. Of course, I'm still looking, but if Jason doesn't return by the Feast of Fortuna, we must act. We can't have a power vacuum any longer. I hope you'll support me for Praetor. It would mean so much to me. And Hazel doesn't want to at first, but then he says, I might be able to help you. It would be a shame if all of those awful rumors about you kept circulating, or gods forbid, if they turned out to be true.
I hate Octavian.
Percy clocks this too. I love how much Percy he still can see the bullshit, because he starts reaching for Riptide in his pocket. And he's like, I don't know what's going on, but he's threatening my friend and I don't like it.
Yeah, I will fight you right here and now. Stop abusing and manipulating her in this way, please. Thank you and goodbye.
Exactly. And so Hazel she takes a deep breath. She says, I'll think about it. And Octavian says, excellent. By the way, your brother's here. And so at this point, Percy's kind of like, I'd rather go meet your brother. And they decide to go on to find the brother. See, they march down the hill with Hazel cursing in Latin. Percy didn't understand all of it, but he got son of a gorgon, a power-hungry snake, and a few choice suggestions about where Octavian could stick his knife.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, and before I forget to explain the whole thing of why I thought it was so funny that he brings up Augustus and stuff when he mentions his name. So the whole thing, Ovid is somebody that wrote a lot of Greek, I'm going to call Greek mythology stories that people really like. We really like them. Like, he's the one who, at least for the first time, wrote down the story of Medusa being a victim. And he also wrote a lot of really interesting things that people bring up a lot now because they're really intriguing. And they focus on the, like, people that were left behind in the wreckage of the gods and the heroes, which is why we love them, obviously. And so reading these books, I'm like, Rick has to like Ovid because of how he talks about this stuff. And so when over a year ago, when Mandy mentioned that she just said Octavian was the name of the emperor that lived during the time of Ovid, and I just started laughing, and I was like, oh my God, like he named Octavian after that Octavian, because basically the emperor at the time of Ovid was like Trump, where he was very manipulative. He was like a gangster. He used all these things against people in the way that Octavian already is being in this one.
Moral superiority is what I would call it.
He used purity culture and purity rules to control people. Like, Ovid got deported from his country because he wrote a poem making fun of him for all of the absurd purity culture rules that he was like. He wouldn't let people like go outside unless they were wearing like certain clothes or acting certain ways and like things like that. And so just like imagine if you heard a story which it probably might have already happened in the last 2 years, but still, of like an author writing a poem being like critical of Trump, and then he got deported. And that's what happened to Ovid. He got deported because he wrote something critical of that emperor, and that's why he was taking all the stories about the gods and writing them as the powerful people that were hurting people, because that's what was happening in their life. And so to read him literally say that is so funny, because I'm like, he's trying to make it super duper obvious to people who know who this is, that this is what Octavian is based on, which, if you just like Google that emperor, there's a lot of things about him that is similar to this character. There's a lot, and so it's fun. But now we get to go to the next part.
Yes. Let's see. Percy realizes how much she hates him. He won't really get elected praetor, will he? I wish I could be certain. Octavian has a lot of friends. Most of them bought. The rest of the campers are afraid of him. That also might be a reference to, there was a lot of poets, like state-sponsored poets at this time. Ovid was kind of in the in crowd, but kind of not. The other ones, I mean, they have a lot of acclaim. Virgil, I've mentioned the Aeneid already. That was Virgil, and that was his kind of magnum opus to the imperial family. Mm-hmm. We have Livy, and he wrote one of the more comprehensive histories that people look at when they look at actual Roman sources. Mm-hmm. Horace is, a lot of people know him for Carpe Diem comes from one of his poems. So mm-hmm. He wrote like shorter form poems, not these like huge, long, epic poems. And those are just like examples of people who are on his in crowd. And Ovid, of course, like writes these things where he's having people or giving people the advice to go pick up chicks at public monuments that Augustus just restored and stuff like that, while he's making purity laws about like, about marriage and being monogamous in your marriage. And Ovid's like, cheat on your wife. Like,
yeah, like here's a way to cheat on your wife
right in front of him.
The gods will never notice if you cheat on your wife if you follow these like quick, easy steps.
It was like very tongue in cheek.
It was extremely satirical.
Yes.
So one of the things with Ovid that is super weird about polytheistic Hellenistic people, I'm saying that wrong, but a lot of like the younger people that are getting into that stuff, they don't like Ovid because he's critical of the gods. But like you should be, there are people in power. But if you get into that like religious idea, essentially, of like worshiping them as like godlike figures, that's why they don't like Ovid. Uh-huh. And it's just very intriguing to every once in a while run into somebody who leaves me a comment being like, Ovid wrote this poem about these horrible things that was so bad that he got deported. And I was like, like a couple months ago, I made a video being like, I know you haven't actually read this poem that you're talking about, because if you read any part of it, it becomes abundantly clear that it is satirical. Mm-hmm. And you should it's never a good idea that the government deports somebody for writing a poem. That's not something that should ever happen. That's like the first clue for you to look into, like, why did that happen? What's going on with this leader that he deported an author because they wrote like what? Like that's not something that should ever happen, but it's something that has gotten like lost with people, that's something they use to not like him because his stories are very hard on the gods. But it's like, no, that's anyway.
They will always be Ovid apologists.
Yep, the ultimate ones. But Rick Riordan's on our side, so we win.
Exactly. They keep walking ahead. Again, remember, we don't necessarily... Like, Percy doesn't find out who Hazel's godly parent is directly. But they start approaching a building. It looks like a black crypt. And inside is a teenage boy in black jeans and an aviator jacket, which to us who've read the first 5... we automatically know aviator jacket, who they're referencing. Mm-hmm. And so Hazel goes up to her brother. She says, hi, I've brought a friend. And Percy sees this person. He's like, I'm getting another one of those weird flashes. I know this person somewhere.
But I don't know why.
he describes him, this kid was almost as pale as Octavian, but with dark eyes and messy black hair. He didn't look anything like Hazel. He wore a silver skull ring, a chain for a belt, and a black t-shirt with skull designs. At his side hung a pure black sword. For a microsecond, when he saw Percy, the boy seemed shocked, panicked even, like he'd been caught in a searchlight. This is Percy Jackson, Hazel said. He's a good guy. Percy, this is my brother, the son of Pluto. Pleased to meet you. I'm Nico D'Angelo. And so we jump into Hazel's perspective next. And so we find out a little bit of her backstory here. She explains to us, I didn't grow up with Nico. Yeah, he's my brother, but he's kind of, not somebody that I've known for that long. The other kids at Camp Jupiter saw him as a traveling oddball, about as harmless as the fawns. Hazel knew better. She hadn't grown up with Nico, hadn't even known him very long, but she knew Nico was more dangerous than Raina or Octavian or maybe even Jason. Then she met Percy. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the intro to Nico we have for this series.
One thing I wanted to mention is that the first time I read these books, I was so mad that Nico was here. I am still kind of mad at him. I say kind of because I know other things that have already happened to him because of reading these books already. But I'm still kind of mad at him that he's at this camp and he hasn't told it, and that he hasn't told anyone about it, but specifically that he doesn't call up Annabeth, Sally, and be like, hey, your loved one is alive. Even if he can't tell them like exactly what's going on yet because of like destiny shit or whatever, at least tell them something. And the fact that he doesn't, I'm just like you knew this whole time where he likely would be. Like he had to know that if Percy randomly disappears and nobody ever finds him, and you suddenly know about this mysterious camp that nobody else knows exists, obviously that's where he's gonna be. And so I was just like, I'm still so mad that for the last like 8 months that he didn't tell anybody. Like that he never said anything. Even if you tell Annabeth and Sally and they can't tell anyone else, just so that they know where he is and they don't worry about him every single day. It just is sad to remember, like, Annabeth in the last book, like she had to have been waiting as soon as Percy was gone. She had to have been waiting for like some battle to start happening, where at the end of the last book, they go to like the campfire and she's wearing like her armor. And like she's wearing that armor because she's been waiting every day since he's been gone for whatever is about to go wrong. She knows it's about to go wrong now. And to think that she's just in that like state of fight or flight forever for the next 8 months, like spending all of her time looking for him, and that the entire time Nico knew where he was and said nothing. Oh my god.
Yeah, I'd be pretty pissed at him too. Okay, so Hazel's thoughts kind of let us know she was convinced for a second Percy might be a god when he came up, because she saw him running. She's like, that kid looks powerful. Plus he's carrying an old lady. This sounds like something that came out of a myth. Frank, don't shoot him. And so she's basically the reason he was able to make it in safe, because she's like, this feels like some sort of test and I don't want to fail. Then we find out that she is really intrigued by Percy because she's been told that a descendant of Neptune would save her. She said, but she thinks, but could Percy take away her curse? It seemed too much to hope for, which we kind of get this teaser of this curse that Hazel has on her for the next 2 chapters in her head. And we kind of got it a little bit with Octavian, even of like the rumors and what everybody thinks they're true and stuff. So let's see. Percy tries to call Nico on the, like, I feel like I know you thing. And Nico's like, do you? And he looks at Hazel confused to try to throw everybody off. But Hazel's not buying it. She thinks something about her brother's reaction wasn't right. He was trying to act casual, but when he had first seen Percy, Hazel had noticed his momentary look of panic. Nico already knew Percy. She was sure of it. Why was he pretending otherwise?
Mm-hmm.
And so she starts, explaining some things. So Nico, you travel all over. Maybe you've met demigods like Percy before, and Nico gives her an expression she knows, like, oh, I shouldn't ask him anything else right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so after Percy hears their story, he asks the story about Gaia's army. You warned Reyna, and Percy asks for an explanation on Gaia. We find out Hazel has had an encounter with Gaia before that sounds very similar to Leo's. She remembers a woman's soft, sleepy voice, a glowing cave, and feeling her lungs fill up with black oil. And so, Nico explains she's the Earth Goddess, the oldest goddess of all. She's in a deep sleep most of the time, but she hates the gods and their children. And Percy's confused Mother Earth is evil.
He's like, it's evil?
She convinced her son, the Titan Saturn, to kill his dad, Uranus, take over the world. The Titans ruled for a long time, then the Titans' children, the Olympian gods, overthrew them. This story sounds familiar, Percy said, but I don't think I ever heard the part about Gaia. She got mad when the gods took over. She took a new husband, Tartarus, the spirit of abyss, and gave birth to a race of giants. They tried to destroy Mount Olympus, but the gods finally beat them, at least the first time. And so Percy explains, like last year, there was this battle with the Titans, and Saturn disappeared during it. We don't actually find out how it ended in this chapter. Percy just kind of says Saturn probably faded back to the abyss. We all thought the war was over, and now it looks like the Titans defeat straight up Gaia. So it ended really weird for the poor Roman kids. If it's just like you're battling and then your big bag just disappears right in front of you.
Yeah. This part I thought was interesting because when Nico is telling the story, he's like pausing when he looks at Percy when he starts talking about like Kronos and how Kronos died and things like that, because he's like seeing if there is a response or he's remembering anything, which he's not, which thank God. Like, yeah. I don't want him remembering that right now if he doesn't have to. But he's still looking at him to see if he remembers anything, which he doesn't. Yeah. But the way that Nico phrased it of like, we thought the war was over, but it's not. And it's just continuing with like a new thing that we now have to deal with. Mm-hmm. That's Percy's mental health or lack thereof in this series in a nutshell. Yeah. That's why when we started reading this book, I was like, oh, I get to talk about Percy and suicidality for a while now, for at least probably a year between this book series and Titan's Curse. But especially this book series, it's pretty blatant when you know what you're looking for. And that sentence is why. Like, he spent 4 years of his life doing all of that. He thought that everybody would be safe. And to him, it only ended for 3 months. And now he's awake and it's happening all over again. Like, he was asleep during all those months when everyone else was preparing. He's not preparing for shit. Like, he was in a coma for 6 months. He woke up and now everything's happening all over again. And it all happens during this summer. This is June. Yeah. The end of the Heroes of Olympus series is right after right around his birthday. Everything happens in 2 months. He doesn't have any time to get ready for it this time. And so this is going to be real interesting.
And Nico seems to know a little bit more about this war. I don't know if it's because he's playing both sides, but because he says, now it looks like the Titans defeat straight up Gaia. She's starting to wake. I've heard reports of giants being reborn, which that sounds like he's being a double agent. He's just bringing the news back from Camp Half-Blood.
Yeah.
If they mean to challenge the gods again, they'll probably start by destroying the demigods. And Percy's like, okay, did we warn Reyna? And Nico says, the Romans don't trust children of Pluto even more than they don't trust children of Neptune. And so it's like...
And he's like... And I like Percy, why? And they don't give him an answer for that yet.
No, they don't. Let's see. Percy, Hazel cut in. Look, the giants aren't the worst problem. Even Gaia isn't the worst problem. The thing you noticed about the Gorgons, how they wouldn't die, that's our biggest worry. Nico and I, we think what's happening is death isn't. Before she could finish, a shout came from down the hill, and then Frank comes in and interrupts them. But so we almost get that death isn't doing it. Thanatos is not doing his job. Yep. I feel like they're about to say it, but they always stop just short. Let's see. We get a weird note here about Hazel has a little heart thing skipping a beat happen when Frank walks in. She doesn't know what it's about because she doesn't like him that way, but it happens and she has this response to him. Just it's put in there. We don't get an explanation either. She's confused about it. We're confused about it. She also doesn't love it because people are already trying to match them up. Like, look, the two biggest losers at camp. You guys are perfect for each other. And she thinks to herself, I haven't felt that way since Sammy. But she stops herself. And, let's see. Frank and Nico get ushered out at this point. You know, Hazel does I gotta talk to my brother, take him with you, Frank. And, Percy looks at Nico one more time, as though he was still trying to place a memory. I'd like to talk with you some more. I can't shake the feeling. Sure, Nico agreed. Later, I'll be staying overnight. And Hazel's excited that he's staying overnight because usually he just comes and goes as he pleases. Go on, Percy, Nico said. Settle in. He turned to Hazel. My sister and I need to talk. So, they sat on the roof of Pluto's shrine, and there's a bunch of diamonds on top. Several $1 million worth of stones glittered on the roof, but fortunately other campers wouldn't touch them. They knew better than to steal from temples, especially Pluto's, and the fawns never came up here. Let's see. So, okay, he says, she asks him, you know that kid, don't you? And he's like, yeah, Percy Jackson. Hazel, I have to be careful what I say. Important things are at work here. Some secrets need to stay secret. You of all people, you should understand that. And to kind of skip ahead a little bit in this conversation, is he dangerous? Nico managed a dry smile. Very, to his enemies. But he's not a threat to Camp Jupiter. You can trust him. Like I trust you, Hazel said bitterly. And Nico kind of fiddles with his ring. Look, I know this is hard, but you have a second chance. You can make things right. Nothing about this is right, Hazel said. If they find out the truth about me, they won't, Nico promised. They'll call a quest soon. They have to. You'll make me proud. Trust me, B. And he almost calls her Bianca, but stops himself. Let's see. She asked, is it true about death? I don't know how to say this one. I'll try my best. Alcyonius to blame, which is another giant kind of put along right with Porphyrion, usually, who was one of our bad giants in the last one. I think so. It's getting bad in the underworld. Dad's going crazy trying to keep them under control. From what Percy said about the Gorgons, things are getting worse up here too. But look, that's why you're here. All the stuff in your past, you can make something good come of it. You belong at Camp Jupiter. That sounded ridiculous. Hazel almost laughed. She didn't belong in this place. She didn't even belong in this century. And then we find out her last memory is December 17th, 1941, and she lived in New Orleans at the time. And so my brother's my resident U.S. history nerd, so I'm like, what do you think of when I say the date December 17th, 1941? He's like, well, it's 10 days after Pearl Harbor.
Yep.
And New Orleans, there's got to be a port nearby. So he couldn't place a very particular historical significance of that particular thing, but the time period is probably what Rick was aiming for. Very, very close to Pearl Harbor Day.
Yeah.
The other thing, really quick, before we move on to the next chapter, is Hazel kind of remarks that her and Nico split the the kind of areas of domain of Hades or Pluto among themselves, where he kind of has more of the dead powers. She has the wealth and riches powers.
Yeah.
Okay, so we get kind of like a lot more of her backstory in this next one, because she kind of like fades into a flashback when this next part happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see. She was at a school called St. Agnes Academy for Colored Children and Indians. And she is Black. We find that out in this part. Hazel didn't understand how other Black kids could be so mean. They should have known better, since they themselves had to put up with the name calling all the time. But they yelled at her and stole her lunch, always asking for those famous jewels. Where's those cursed diamonds, girls? Give me some or I'll hurt you. She'd get basically bullied, except for this one friend that she mentions, Sammy. He was the perfect St. Agnes student, is his own joke about himself, because he's Mexican American, so he's both colored and Indian, is the joke, because a lot of us have, like, native blood. They should give me a double scholarship, he said. Let's see, we find out a little bit, too, of our hints at who Hazel's godly parent is. If Nico wasn't a big enough hint, if, like, you started with this series of books, people hated her. Cats hissed, dogs growled. Even the stupid hamster in Miss Finley's classroom squeaked in terror when she gave it a carrot, but horses didn't mind her. And so we find out that's how she became friends with this Sammy guy, is because he helped tend to the horses, and so he would take her on horse rides even though they weren't allowed.
Yep, one of the fandom's favorite fun facts about Hazel is that she's a horse girl.
Yeah, it's cute.
It is cute.
Let's see, we find out a little bit about her mom. She goes by Queen Marie, and she lived in an old apartment above a jazz club. Despite the beginning of the war, there was a festive mood in the air. New recruits would roam the streets, laughing and talking about fighting the Japanese. They'd get tattoos in the parlors or propose to their sweethearts right on the sidewalk. Some would go upstairs to Hazel's mother to have their fortunes read or to buy charms from Marie Levesque, the famous Greek queen. Is that how you say that? Greek queen?
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear 2 bits for this good luck charm? I took it to a guy I know, and he says it's a real silver nugget, worth $20. That voodoo woman is crazy. And so, like, she is essentially giving away all of the jewels and precious metals that come off of Hazel as these, like, good luck charms, kind of leaning into the hoodoo spirit of New Orleans from the sound of it.
Mm-hmm.
But Hazel starts freaking out because these good luck charms are not good luck charms. Then she heard stories spreading. The locals began to realize how many horrible things happened to people who bought those good luck charms or got paid with Queen Marie's treasure. Charlie Gasco lost his arm in a harvester while wearing a gold bracelet. Mr. Henry at the general store dropped dead from a heart attack after Queen Marie settled her tab with a ruby. So people are whispering things about Hazel, they're whispering things about her mom, and at this point, she's kind of, even though she's made a business doing this with Hazel's little gems and metals, she's starting to get the reputation that she's a witch and they want to get away with her, like they want to do away with her, and the only business she's drumming up is travelers coming into New Orleans.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hazel knows her mom's full of shit, too. Queen Marie had always told Hazel her gree was bunk and hokum. She didn't really believe in charms or fortune-telling or ghosts. She was just a performer, like a singer or an actress doing a show for money. But Hazel knew her mother did believe in some magic. Hazel's curse wasn't hokum. Queen Marie just didn't want to think it was her fault, that somehow she had made Hazel the way she was. And essentially would find out she blames her dad. She's like, it's your dad's fault you have this curse on you. So...
Just some of that parental alienation.
Gotta love it, right? So, Hazel at this point walks in on her mom having what seems to be a conversation with another person, but then she realizes with herself, and she's doing both voices in a freaky little back and forth. One of the things she overhears was the voice other than her mom doing her normal voice. What has he ever done for you? He gave you a poisoned child, but we can use her gift for good. We can strike back at the gods. You will be under my protection in the north, far from the gods' domain. I'll make my son your protector. You'll live like a queen at last. So she's having a conversation with this person who's talking about protecting Hazel and her mom from the gods more than they have been, selling her this idea of you just have to head to the north and it'll happen. Mm-hmm. But while Hazel is overhearing this conversation, suddenly a man appears. And he is wearing a dark suit. He has a silver skull ring on his finger. What kind of threw me off here is because we haven't necessarily seen what the gods present themselves as when they're not tricking people in the Roman aspect. And this sounds so much like our description of Hades from the first series, but he's wearing a suit that shifts images of faces in agony as if lost souls were trying to escape from the folds of his clothes. So at first I was like, wait, is her dad Hades or is it Pluto? But then they later say Pluto in this memory. So I think they just happen to look pretty similar from the descriptions. Mm-hmm. The other thing he apparently looks like in this particular description is Hitler. Because she at first is like, he looks like that guy Adolf Hitler from the news without the mustache. And he looks like he could be his dad or his brother or something like that. Which World War II has been canon in Percy Jackson to be a demigod fight. Just like, this is our blatant, yeah, Hitler was probably a Hades child.
Yeah, it's the way to think about it is like the magical world is like bleeding over into the real world. Mm-hmm. And so it's like how the things that were happening in like New York, they said that it was like a huge storm that was like going across the US when it was them fighting Typhon. Yeah. And or like Percy being seen as like a bad kid who's like wanted by the FBI in like multiple states by the time he's like 16 because they think that he's like blown up like a train and done all of these bad things and stuff, but in reality he's just like Percy. And so the way I know this whole thing makes people upset when they think about it, love like that person being like a Hades or a Pluto child, but it's the idea of that the way that we know World War II in this version wouldn't be like what was actually happening. Like what like regular people thought was happening in New York during the Battle Labyrinth and the Last Olympian was not what was actually happening. Like Percy wasn't actually like a felon in the first book, like blowing stuff up, being like a bad kid with like fighting somebody with like a gun on a beach and all that kind of stuff. He was like a kid. And so that's the way I think about it, is that this version, whatever they think is going on isn't actually happening. And so like a Hades kid wasn't actually doing the things that real life that person did. Is like the way that you can kind of look at it. Because that's like the mist like would make them see these atrocious things happening as that. But it's not, it's the way that they always talked about in the first book, at least to me, was like the things that these two kids from like powerful families basically, or powerful gods, created this to happen, but they weren't like, they didn't mean for it to happen, I guess. Is like they weren't actually being that evil. Maybe there was one of them being like Luke or something, but it's up in the air which one it is actually. Because it might not even be the one that people think it is, depending on how they cover everything up in this version.
That is very true. So yeah, she like slowly starts to realize that this guy is her dad through her conversations with him, because he does apologize for this cursed fate she seems to have. And that's what makes it snap for her. She's like, wait, you're my dad? And he says, I am Pluto. Life is never easy for my children, but you have a special burden. Now that you're 13, we must make provisions. And so she stops him. You did this to me. You cursed me and my mother. You left us alone. And she shouts at him, you're evil. You ruined our lives. And Pluto says, what has your mother told you, Hazel? Has she never explained her wish or told you why you were born under a curse?
Mm-hmm.
And Hazel doesn't say anything there. No, I suppose she wouldn't. Much easier to blame me. What do you mean? Poor child, you were born too soon. I cannot see your future clearly, but someday you will find your place. A descendant of Neptune will wash away your curse and give you peace. I fear, though, that is not for many years. And so he gives her a gift right after this because this memory is on her birthday of that year. He gives her a sketch pad and a box of colored pencils. He says, I understand you enjoy art and horseback riding. These are for your art. As for the horse, that you'll have to manage yourself. Now I must speak with your mother. Happy birthday, Hazel. And she thinks to herself, happy birthday. Go draw a picture. See you in another 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
Which, yeah, call him out, girly.
Yep.
Let's see. So Hazel's mom and Pluto have an argument here where he's trying to convince her she shouldn't listen to whatever this voice she was talking to herself with was saying. That voice does not actually want to protect you. You're under my protection currently. Like, you don't need that. And she argues with him, when have you ever protected me? He says, you have no idea. I've kept you alive, you and the child. My enemies are everywhere among the gods and men. Now with the war on, it'll only get worse. You must stay where I can. The police think I'm a murderer, Queen Marie shouted. My clients want to hang me as a witch, and Hazel, her curse is getting worse. Your protection is killing us. And so the argument kind of it descends into, no, we're leaving anyway. I'm not listening to you, Pluto. He tries to warn her again. Whoever's whispering in your ear, whoever's turning you against me. She goes, it's you! You're turning me against you! And he tells her, you won't survive. If you go north, you'll both die. I can foresee that clearly. Get out, she said. Hazel wished Pluto would stay and argue. Whatever her mother was talking about, Hazel didn't like it, but her father slashed his hand across the air and dissolved into shadows, like he really was a spirit. And so Hazel's mom calls her out, knew she was like listening to this entire thing. Hazel is replaying in her mind the fact that she kept being called a poisoned child.
Yeah.
Which that got to me. And she just gets told, pack a bag, we're moving. Where? Alaska, Queen Marie answered. You're going to make yourself useful. We're going to start a new life. The way her mother said that, it sounded as if they were going to create a new life for someone else or something else. What did Pluto mean? Hazel asked. Is he really my father? He said you made a wish. Go to your room. Pack. And so after that, she snaps back into current time, and Nico's like, it happened again. Like, in that time, you were out for a long time. And so he asks her what she saw, and she's like, I saw my last memory from back in the day. And like, this is where you find out she's already had this bonding moment with Nico. Not only are we the only kids of the gods of the underworld, but we're also transplants from 1940s somehow together.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. She's so it's kind of this interesting place to be in where she has someone in what has to be like the craziest we can relate to each other's situation ever in a book.
Yeah. They can.
Nico says if a flashback like you have to work on controlling these memories. If a flashback happens like that when you're in combat, and she says, I know, I'm trying. And Nico actually does a big brother move here. He says, it's okay. I think it's a side effect from, your time in the underworld. Hopefully it'll get easier. And so she thinks to herself, after 8 months, the blackouts seem to be getting worse, as if her soul were attempting to live 2 different time periods at once. No one had ever come back from the dead before, at least not the way she had. Nico was trying to reassure her, but neither of them knew what would happen. I can't go north again, Hazel said. Nico, if I have to go back to where it happened, you'll be fine. You'll have friends this time. Percy Jackson, he's got a role to play in this. You can sense that, can't you? He's a good person to have at your side. And so she starts thinking about, again, I've been told this descendant of Neptune's going to wash away my curse. Mm-hmm. Where did he come from? Why did the ghost call him the Greek? Before Nico could respond, horns blew across the river. The legionnaires were gathering for evening muster. We'd better get down there, Nico said. I have a feeling tonight's war games are going to be interesting. And that's where we leave off for these chapters.
Yep. It's interesting. The thing I was thinking, I was like trying to compare the ways that things are different from Camp Half-Blood with Camp Jupiter. Because I like the fact that neither one of them is really, there's problems with each of them.
Yes.
That's like what I like about it, is that neither one of them is like, even though Camp Jupiter has like this whole like civilization thing that Camp Half-Blood hasn't been able to like build yet, there's things about it that aren't great either. Like, you could argue that splitting the kids up by their parent is like not a nice thing to do, but also at the same time, there isn't like a ranking system really at Camp Half-Blood. Like, it doesn't really matter necessarily like all the time what cabin you're from, as long as you're just from one. Like, yeah, the different cabins have like different grudges for different reasons for their like godly parent. But it's not like if you're like an Apollo kid that you're not allowed to talk to anyone from anyone else, or that you're like lower outside of like the big three kids, I guess.
Yeah.
Then like everyone else, like everyone is like together all the time, so it doesn't really matter. But at this camp, they're like, they place them in different like cohorts based on like how good they think they are at like battle, basically. Yeah. And so immediately from the beginning, you know, you're like lower than everybody else in a way that is a little bit more severe than it is, at least to me anyway. Maybe that's not accurate, but that's how I interpret anyway, is that it feels like it's a little more severe to like pick like, oh, you're in like the 5th cohort, that means you're a loser. And that's basically like the idea of it. And so those are like, and so the people in the other groups don't necessarily want to like hang out with you in that sort of a way. And so that kind of thing doesn't happen as much at Camp Half-Blood. And then the other thing is that they're like fawns, or just like homeless and are like begging for like food or garbage, which is their food. And that's it. Like, they don't have like like the whole thing that Percy says, like thinking that they should be involved in camp.
Yeah, they should be doing more than this.
Yeah, they should be like a part of society, basically, instead of homeless people that are kind of like ignored by basically everyone. But that in this camp, because if you would think about how Rick writes how people in Roman society would be, they wouldn't find things like satyrs to be like valuable members of society in that sort of way that they think could contribute, because they're so like focused on being like tough and like controlling your emotions and everything being about like battle and strategy and all this stuff, that they would see like satyrs as being somehow less than, which seems like that's what they think of them. Like the way that Hazel reacted was like the idea that they could be involved is like weird. Like, she couldn't imagine them being more involved in stuff in the way that they are at Camp Half-Blood. And so there's just little stuff that's mixed up. Like, yeah, there's a really nice society here, but if Grover came here, they would expect him to be like homeless begging for food instead of somebody who's been Grover like his entire life. And so it's a good mix, that there's good mixed together with the bad, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And that's nice, because it's not like Camp Jupiter is perfect and Camp Half-Blood has all the problems, because it's not like that at all. It's just that Camp Jupiter's Camp Jupiter just has like streamlined things because they're so like freaking serious all the time.
Yeah, but they're too rigid, which is what we're already getting the impressions of.
Yeah, like the rigidity of none of them going to look for Jason.
Right? Because
when the other kids are like leaving to look for Percy every day. Nico's supposed to be looking for Percy like a little jerk, but but still, like, the rest of them are all like trying to figure out how to like take care of everybody at camp while looking for him at the same time. And these kids are like, oh well, we can't go look for Jason because those are the rules. We got to listen to the kid who murders teddy bears. Um And so we just have, those are the rules. We're not allowed to like pick a leader until it's this, Feast of Fortuna. And so everyone's just going to sit here helpless until that it makes how Jason is make a little bit more sense, that he like doesn't think about anything until it's like shoved in his face, basically, because that's very much how like the Roman kind of camp operates. It's like nobody is the one that wants to like stand out in a bad way. And so they all just kind of like follow the rules, to the point that I think that that's why Octavian's able to like manipulate and blackmail people in the way that he is, because nobody wants to say out loud what he's doing. And like the blackmail that he has, when you have to follow the rules all the time, there's like really easy things that become like secrets that you don't want anyone to find out about. But like probably most of those secrets in New Jersey, they wouldn't care because they just don't have that like strict of like order and justice. Like people at Camp Half would be like, can you relax? Like I'm picturing them meeting the Stoll brothers.
Yeah.
Like, that would be so funny.
Because
they would just be like,
a lot of fun, like messing with people at Camp
like,
Half-Blood. Or sorry,
how do you exist in this world?
Yeah.
I don't know. But the other thing I was going to say really quickly at the end is that I saw the Odyssey. That feels like that happened 17 years ago. But
okay, good, right?
I saw the Odyssey. Mandy still has to see it before we can like talk about it. And so I told her some things while being vague, because I don't want to spoil everything or anything like that. I will say that the thing I told her was that I understood why people who like classics in Greek mythology, that they said that it was a good movie, but that it is a terrible adaptation of the Odyssey.
Yeah.
And it absolutely is. Like, without telling, like, if you like it, that's the thing that's hard about it, is that I'm like, this movie seems like great, but also who the fuck are these people? Like, compared to like a lot of the characters that and things like that I know. It's interesting. It's just, they changed a lot of stuff, which is okay. Like, that's fine. People obviously are enjoying the movie. The day after, I saw it with my mom and her boyfriend, and the day after, my mom was asking me, like, how Odysseus' ending is in the movie. She was like, does that happen every time? And I was like, no. And I was like, there's like a million different versions of like the ending of the Odyssey, because he was like, and I explained the whole thing to her and started telling her all the different versions of how his story ends, and was telling her about the Circe book, because I was explaining how he like stays with Circe and the whole thing with Telemachus and Circe. And I was like, there's one version where Telemachus ends up getting married to Circe, and she was like, what?
Yeah.
Because like this movie version, that's like a weird thing to think about. I do want to talk about it eventually, not only because obviously so people can get your perspective of somebody who knows about Greek mythology things, but I also wanted to talk about it because of the sexual assault stuff and the like the abuse stuff, but particularly the Circe scene. I honestly have no idea what to think about that. Yeah. Well,
I guess we'll see.
I told you like what to like look away during a certain part, but not because of anything like gross sexual assault wise. Kind of like, I feel like it felt like it was supposed to be like, invoking those themes, but it's not that happening. But there are like some things that happen with themes of that, or just themes of like abuse with with certain characters in the movie, that I was just like, what? Like, it felt it just like left me feeling weird, where I still don't know what I think about it. It will be the third version of Circe that we've seen so far.
Yeah.
And so we can compare that version to the other ones that we've seen in a way that is fun.
Yeah. All right, I gotta get William to bed, so we're gonna stop here. Like, subscribe, hype, all of the things that YouTube lets you do on here. As we talked about at the beginning, we have a big research project we are both working on for a video. If you happen to know anything about that, happen to have any links you want to send our way, any screenshots send our way, we are open to it. We will only share what we're given permission to share.
Yep. And we're serious about that. We don't put content for human beings.
No, human beings come before everything that could come from the content, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So, that being said, we hope you guys take care of yourselves. Remember to check in on yourselves. And if you, like us, have been caught in the whirlwind of the online drama sphere for the past 48 hours, remember to give yourself a break. Maybe talk about Percy Jackson with a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Something that is a little light and fluffy. Because, yeah, the world is not the fun place that it can be sometimes right now, so.
Not so much. That's okay.
Yeah. All right. So we'll be back next week, probably with more Percy. I can't tell you when we're going to have this big research project done. We're planning for it to be standalone and probably not in our usual format. So
yeah, especially because this weekend is actually when D23 is. And they announced in the firestorm that has been the last couple days that they're going to live stream the panel there.
Ooh,
their panel on Disney Plus. And so everyone will like immediately know everything that they're showing everybody, so we won't have to wait for people to like get out. And so I'm sure there'll be some news like that will be a nice break from even though it's necessary, like still fires are burning.
Yeah.
Even if it's good and it's like kind of like bringing things to a surface that will make the overall online community commentary, whatever space better, it still sucks when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to head out. Take care of yourselves, everybody.